Hi, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen. And tonight we are going to be discussing the Natalie Wood film Gypsy about Gypsy Rosalie. But I was told by Robert Gwaltney and others that you got to have a gimmick. So I wanted to share with you first something very special. And I have to put on my readers for this because I know what you're thinking. What would this woman ever know about reading and books? Well, don't judge a book by its cover. And now I'm going to share with you in my stripper voice, chapter 2. Don't judge a book by its cover. During a trial in which she was accused of indecency on the stage, the judge said, "Miss West, are you trying to show contempt for this court?" Mae West: "On the contrary, Your Honor, I was doing my best to conceal it." Well, Mae West was one of the when I was a child. So I'm just going to read you the first chapter of my, the Pulpwood Queen's Tiara Wearing Book Sharing Guide to Life. People often ask me, what in the world does a bookstore and a beauty salon have in common? Both are about friendship, community, and feeling good about yourself. They will walk into my shop and turn around to leave saying, "Oh, it's just a beauty shop." I will stop them and I will reply, "Wait, we are so much more. We are a bookstore too." They stop in their tracks and they turn around as I explain what my shop really is. Sometimes they will stay on for just a couple of minutes, and often they will stay on for almost an hour. You see, they judged a book by the cover, when all they had to do was keep an open mind and experience what beauty and the book really is. Well, tonight, y'all, Robert Gwaltney, who is on the other side of me, and my co-host for the Book and Film Club, we're watching Gypsy, which is a story made to film on Gypsy Rosalie. And I read a wonderful book some time back with the Pulpwood Queens on Gypsy Rosalie by Abbott Kohler. And it really told what a smart businesswoman she really was. I mean, this woman was savvy. And I think that it is important that we don't stereotype. In this movie, when I was a child, my favorite part was the gimmick. You know, you gotta have a gimmick. I love the trumpeter. I love, the butterfly girl. So I did my butterfly thing. I just love the movie. But what is interesting and that I want to discuss about the film tonight is that it's a comedy, but there's a lot of underlying issues, mother daughter, trying to find your place in the world, trying to find out who you really are. There's a lot of serious issues behind the comedy. That's why I am an advocate for them making a category for comedy in the Academy Awards. This was a brilliant film, and it had Rosalind Russell and Carl Malden. But I want to open it up with Robert had just shared just before we went on the air some quotes. And I love the one from, that Natalie Wood said in the quotes. You remember the ones that you put up just a few minutes
Yeah,
ago?
I'm a pretty girl, mama, which I often say.
Well, growing up with a mother that always told everybody I was semi-beautiful, I could really relate to that scene in the movie because my mother was a beauty queen and I was just a tomboy. But I found out that if you're a reader, if you invest in the storytelling in movies, the storytelling in songs, the storytelling in arts, the storytelling in books, you become we're all beauty within queens. And we have also some special guests here tonight. We have Baby Doe, who was,
Baby June,
I mean,
Baby June,
Baby June. Tell us all about, this is Ruthie Landis, one of our authors. Tell us about your costume.
What costume?
All I know is I like you as a blonde.
I don't know. Well, this is me and my sister.
Oh my gosh, did you make those?
No, they were a gift.
Oh, they're adorable.
Aren't they?
And you were the baby sister?
I was the baby sister. And actually, this is not really true. When my friend, my Tawana, Joy, passed away about the same time your Tawana did,
Yes.
a friend made these for me. And I'm the redheaded one, and my friend is the blonde one. And so they follow me everywhere. But I thought, oh my God, it's baby June and Gypsy.
Yeah.
I know. That's just
You're just getting
awesome.
through it together.
Yeah. Sisters are really important. And it's a big trend in reading right now to do the story from like the Chanel sisters, the sister of Coco Chanel, or the winemaker's daughter, or it's a because it's a story we haven't heard before, and I love those stories. And I think the story of Gypsy Rosalie, you have to read the book by Karen Abbott, which is now Kohler Abbott. And because it's a really great book, and she did a lot of research on it. But tonight we're going to be talking about the film. And TK Thorne is here too, also one of our authors. We're so excited to see you. You're just like in a library. Look at that.
Well, no, this is just one little piece of my book world. Yeah, I'm at home. In fact, I was late because I was out in the pasture spraying poison ivy. Isn't that glamorous?
Very.
Yes. And how's those horses doing? She rescued 2 horses. And how are they doing?
They are doing wonderfully. In fact, I was looking at the one that was the cast aside not wanted one, and she is just gorgeous. She is filled out, and she's lost all of her winter coat, and she's coming in this sleek black. She looks great.
Are you riding these horses?
I have ridden the other one, the thoroughbred, a couple of times, but not a lot.
Well, it's probably good to ride with somebody. It's like, don't go swimming by yourself. Don't go riding horses by yourself. So
right. Well, so far it's just been in my little pasture. So I have my phone. If something happens, I can call for help. But yeah, there's a little risk taking going on here. Yeah, but they're doing great, and I'm so happy that I have them. They just looking out. We don't have the fences are partly gone, which is like being part pregnant. It just doesn't work. So they have free reign, and I'll get up in the morning sometimes and look out my front door, and the horses are in the front yard.
Oh.
And it's beautiful. There's something so peaceful about seeing horses graze.
Well, it's also, my grandparents live in the middle of a pasture in the Flint Hills, and their fence was kind of the same way. And so, one of my, this tells you a lot about me, how strange I am. One of the favorite things we do is collect the dried cow patties, and we pretend we would put them in my grandma's pie pans, and we use the outdoor outhouse as a playhouse. And we poured over the 2-seater, and people go, man, that's using your imagination. I go, well, the cows just roamed in and out of the,
You gotta have a gimmick.
You got to have a gimmick.
Call her old Cow Patty Kathy.
Kathy. That's my new nickname. That's so cool. Well, anyway, this film was done back in I'm trying to think what year. I just watched
1962.
About 62. And it was, I love Natalie Wood so much. I've watched every one of her films. I think she is probably she's, Betty Davis may be my one from back in the day, but in this era, I think Natalie Wood I remember going to see with my parents in our big old Cadillac, Sex and the Single Girl with Steve McQueen. Can you imagine? My parents took me to stuff I shouldn't have ever gone to. We went and saw Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte, with Betty Davis. Oh, that scared the living daylights out of me. But we saw all the Elvis movies and the Beach Blanket Bingos and all that stuff. But, we just went to whatever they wanted to go see, we'd go see. And that was a pretty, kind of racy story back in the 60s. But she always was very provocative in everything that she selected to be, the films that she selected to be in, this one was, can you imagine how she had to practice those walks and things and all the things it takes to be? It's kind of like when Demi Moore did the movie about the stripper and she had to pole dance. I mean, you have to learn how to do that stuff. And it kind of fascinates me because, that takes a real dedication. Just like Elizabeth Taylor gaining all that weight for Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and then you think of Matthew McConaughey, who lost all that weight when he did the film. I was really worried about him. He lost so much weight. What was it? Dallas
Players Club.
Dallas Players Club. That was a powerful film. But this film was, she was just so beautiful in it. And she was so young. And
She was 24.
Yeah.
She was 24 when she made that. And she played from, I mean, we never knew how old she was, right? Because
we knew she was a kid because she grew up, on all these.
Lying about her age. She never, the birthday song, I wonder how old I am. I mean, no, she didn't have any idea how old she was.
Unfortunately, when children begin in movies and films at a very young age, they grow up really fast because they're mostly around adults. And oftentimes they have a hard time relating to children their own age, especially, but they miss out on their childhoods. And I'm sure Natalie would. I think I read a book years ago about her life. I know about her sister, and I know, of course, about the infamous, everybody thinks she was murdered. Something happened on that yacht, and I seriously think she got mad and just decided to take off and slipped and fell. It was kind of a stormy night. I don't know, who knows, but it had repercussions to everybody that was in her circle and even beyond. They're still bringing it up today and making movies. So, but Natalie Wood she was adorable, and there was something, she never seemed like she was acting to me. It was always, she was so into that role that she became that character. And I loved her in the film with Inside Daisy Clover, because we watched her grow up before our very eyes. And what's the one I never can remember the title for, and it's just the best, where she has a breakdown?
Splendor in the Grass.
Splendor in the Grass. Oh my gosh, that is a powerful film.
You guys just amaze me, rattling off these names and movie titles.
Well, it's because we're film buffs, and I love theater, I love film, I love books. And I actually got even more engrossed in reading because of watching films on TV, because I'm the kind of person that if I watch a film, then I want to see if there's a book about it or something to do with it. And usually there is, of some sort. But screenplay writing is storytelling too. So I think it's fascinating how a director and a screenwriter will take a book and a story and make it their own. And it may not be, I always say the book is always better, but not always. I've watched some films that I thought, well, wow, that was way better than the book, But my number one pick for best book to film is To Kill a Mockingbird, because even though it was abbreviated, it was cast so well, the script was done so well. I just wish that the authors were brought more into the process of the films. I think, yeah, you can still make it your own or whatever, but I still think that, why did you pick the story in the first place, right? So, have all of you seen the film? I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
TK, have you seen GYPSY?
Oh, I'm sure I have long ago,
Well,
but not for sure.
I watched it, just watched it again. And I have to tell you, I'm even more impressed by it now than I was back in the day. It was made in 1962. So I'm trying to think, I would have been 8 years old when that came out.
I kept wondering whose baby was crying. but I think that's my cat.
Well, there's no babies here except for baby
Yeah, so I apologize.
Baby June.
baby June's here. But
So Kathy, Ethel Merman actually originated the role on Broadway and was livid she didn't get to play in the movie. And years later, of course, an interesting tidbit is that Rosalind Russell, for the most part, all of her singing was dubbed by another singer.
of course.
And so years later, after Ethel Merman passed away, they found the original recordings of Rosalind Russell trying to sing the Gypsy songs because she was so bitter about it. She harbored that ill will all those years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you know what I was gonna say? So the thing about Rosalind Russell and the choosing of her as opposed to Ethel Merman, I mean, Ethel Merman wasn't beautiful, right? And the other thing is she really could have sold, like you could have believed that Mama Rose really deserved to be a star if Ethel Merman played it.
Right.
But what I found interesting is, having directed and, been in the theater, is that, Rosalind Russell actually, they had somebody dub her, but they didn't dub her well. Like she wasn't sounding great, first of all. Second of all, she was stiff in her movements and her dance. She was not like you went, you're making your children live out your dream not because you really would have made it, because you wouldn't have made it, and I thought that was really interesting. I wouldn't say, she was a loser, but she would never have been a star, and it made it feel to me more painful even that she had to lose her two children that way.
That one particular scene, and she said, all my life I've done this, I've slaved, I've put these shows on a penny and a dime, and she goes, and what did I do it for? What did I do it for? And then Natalie Wood goes, I thought you did it for me, Mama. And her daughter was just like she was playing a game. She was just a piece player in the game of her life. But if you read anything about the real Mama Rose, it was pretty sure that she was a lesbian, and she had all these relationships with these women, but because she was always trying to fund her shows, and she'd have relationships with these men, which finally explains to me why in the world she got in a relationship with Carl Malden. Wouldn't have been anybody. And it's not even the way he looks. It's just, there's something about him that's just, I can't put the word on it, but it just seems almost like, pathetic or something.
Like in Yiddish, they call it a nebish, which means a nebish. It means just kind of not exactly a loser, not exactly a mama's boy, but, somebody who just really doesn't have the stones.
And he was crazy about her, but
I loved him. I loved Carl Malden in
he was the perfect person for the
role. When he played.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like half the time I like the character players in movies, and a good example for me, the first person that came to mind is the guy who played the fiance in Titanic, and I'm trying to think
Billy
of
Zane.
Oh my God,
Dreamy Billy Zane.
I was in love with him. I said, forget, Leonardo. He's the hunk, but he played a bad guy so bad, but he still was quite handsome, So, but I always look at the character actors because I think they're more interesting, and Carl Malden was that, as well as Rosalind Russell played this, but she didn't take over. Natalie Wood held her own. I mean, she was the star, and she was always trying to better herself and learning French and all these things, and she classed up her act. And but I again, the book by Abbott Kohler, you've got to read it. It's really a great read. What was your favorite scenes in the film for those that watched it?
Well, one of my favorite musical numbers is when June and Louise are singing "If Mama Were Married."
Mary.
Yeah, that's a stunning song. I mean, it's just, I mean, the range is amazing. So that's one of my favorite numbers. But I love in the film, I love that moment where you see her transform from Louise to Gypsy when she's starting off and she's really awkward with her movements. And then the next thing you know, she's just belting, you know, she is Gypsy at that moment.
It gives me kind of chills because
Yeah.
you know she kind of grew up. You know, here she was this little tomboy kind of kid, and then you know I can't imagine what that would be like. You know, um,
Are we talking about the character or the actress?
that the actress in the film. Now I don't know anything about Natalie Wood's mother, but she started very young. So, but you know, when you live out in California and you know somebody sees you and we want to put you in the movies, that is such a lure. You know. And it doesn't happen very often. So if somebody gets into it, but I just want somebody to name me one child actor that actually never had any trauma and came out okay. Can you think?
Well, I will. She had a lot of drama and trauma, but she's come out okay, and that's Drew Barrymore.
Oh yeah, she's
Yeah,
my favorite. But my
Yeah,
God,
but she went through,
but
she
yeah,
went
she
through.
had quite a journey though.
yeah.
Oh my! And now look at her. And you know what happened? She had her own children, and then she realized that she didn't want to be like her mother or even her father, for that say. And if you read the book about Ashley Judd, who was the uh, wonderful, you know, her mother was Naomi Judd, and Ashley couldn't sing, so her mother pawned her off to every family member. She went from farm to her dad to all kinds of different people, and she had a pretty horrific childhood. And then she went into acting. She's one of my favorite actresses. But the only person I could think of was Shirley Temple, because even though Shirley Temple, she went through some awkward time from her teenage years going into adult films, but then she grew up and then she became, you know, an American ambassador to, I forget which country, but she worked for the United Nations um, and was really good at it because of course she knew how to work with people, you know. But she's the only one I can think of that you didn't hear about going in rehab or getting off drugs or you know, alcohol
Well,
problems.
I thought, I, I think the real tragedy is baby June.
Yeah,
It's me
yeah,
because is because
absolutely.
I mean she is written off. Like she's begging to grow up. She wants to be
Life.
a star. She really wants to be an actress, you know.
Yeah.
And June, and she became June Havoc, so she did do acting. But in the movie, you know, they like she runs away and like there's no more June, like she's gone, and that felt really really sad to me. It was like she'd been run through the ringer. You know, it's just because she was the chosen one doesn't mean that is an easy role to play either. There's a burden to that.
And
And
that
she was,
era, they kept those girls in those little baby doll dresses until they were way too old, you know. And
So
it's
you know, Ann Jillian played Baby June. Remember Ann Jillian?
yes.
I
Um,
remembered her. Yeah,
she did a,
she's still
Didn't
out
she?
there.
No, she died of cancer, didn't
Did
she?
she?
uh, I
No.
think she, well, so she, I think I'll have to Google it before we end, but she did. I thought she was a breast cancer survivor.
No, I think she
Um,
Oh,
is.
yeah,
I
I
think
oh,
think
I
she.
hope so.
Yeah,
I hope
so.
so.
I
She
think
tells
she.
the story where she's back and she's watching Natalie Wood film a scene, and she has someone walk up beside her, and the gentleman says, "Isn't she beautiful?" And Aunt Jillian says, "She sure is." And she turned to look, and it was Warren Beatty.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that's funny.
That's nice.
No, I mean, but just that it's interesting because last week we did Auntie Mame, right?
Yes.
And we talked a little bit about the kind of mother energy she had as an aunt, not a real mother, but how deeply she loved him, and how, even though she, had him go to a school with naked people running around naked, she really loved him, and she really did not use him.
No.
She didn't use him. And then you have the contrast between uh, Rosalind Russell now playing a mother who did just the opposite, was pure narcissist, just a pure narcissist. I know she might be smart and all that, and was hiding her own identity and had a lot of pain, but she really did use everybody. But did you guys notice this? Like, I noticed this. So in Auntie Mame, she has that hilarious scene where she goes to Vera, is on stage with Vera with the jangles and everything, and she destroys that scene. She goes and steals that scene, right? And what happened in this movie? Rosalind Russell was doing the same thing. They would be auditioning for Mr. whatever his name is, and she'd come running out onto the stage, and it didn't matter. So it was so interesting that it was like two different movies, but she kind of did the same shtick.
Having a hair salon and being a cosmetologist all my life, I've been involved in a lot of pageants, and everything from the Miss Kansas preliminaries and Miss Kansas and to the beauty pageants in Texas. And these mothers that put their children in these pageants, the kids are just having fun playing dress up. In fact, my daughter her aunt put her in a pageant, and I said, "What? Please no." And she goes, "Once she wants to be in it." She played dress up. She wore this fuchsia dress, and she put on fuchsia lipstick. And I said, "So you're going to wear that?" She goes, "Uh-huh, I look pretty." And so she went out there, and man, she just was nailing it and doing all this stuff. And afterwards, the notes back from the judge, she didn't even play. She got to participate. They said the lipstick was inappropriate. And I said, "She's playing dress up. I just want her to have fun doing it. So I don't care." And they just looked at me like, she could have won. She did win. She was having fun with her friends, and she dressed up. And I remember my cousins came to the pageant, and afterwards she came up to me and she goes, "Man, I got gypped. I did the pretty feet. I did the spin perfectly, and I got ripped off." I go, "That's the last pageant for you, little girl." She was like, I don't know, kindergarten. So anyway, but it was funny. But my cousins and I were just laughing, and she just went and she was furious because she just goes, "I just don't know. They can't see my skills." We were just laughing. That's Madeline.
You had no self-image problem, did you?
No, she doesn't to this day either. She's just exactly who she is. And, that's the way we should be. If she wanted to play dress up, that's what they are anyway. They're dress up pageants that, the kids want to pretend they're, Miss America or whatever. But but if you buy into that and really think that my daughter's the most beautiful or the most, they're just playing dress up, people. They just want to play Miss America. That's all it is. And
I think that's true in the pageants, but having made so many commercials and been the mom in the commercials, what I saw those stage moms, TV moms do, when my son was born, and he was really cute, and I was an actor, so like the agent said, "Oh, do you want him to start to audition and all that?" I said, "No, I would never use my child like that. Are you kidding me?" Like it was Mama Rose. And these moms, their whole identity was wound up in I mean, and the pushiness and the you could just see it was a whole vicarious thing. And they were also getting money for a college education for their kid.
Yeah, it's really sad being forced to be in a pageant. It is the most humiliating experience that any young woman, you got to have thick skin to be in those things, because the things people say about you, and it's not like, not things you can do anything about. I mean, the way, I told the story about how they laughed at me when they read my measurements when I was in this pageant. And I couldn't help that I, the way I was built, I'm the product of my parents' genes. Now, if you want to talk about the inside of me, yeah, we can talk all day, but that was back before they ever asked you questions about your views on life or the world. They didn't ask you anything. They just wanted to know how you looked in a bathing suit, and what your figure was, and it was all men judges, and it was humiliating. And but I don't see anything wrong if a young girl is smart and she wants to be in a pageant where she shows her talents and her poise and answers questions. The only thing I get upset about is when they really focus on, your physical appearance, because, you get what you're born with. I mean, you can doll it up all you want, but um, you don't have any say in that matter. I think it's more important what you read in a book. And so, and the thing about it is, the real Gypsy was constantly a lifelong learner, trying to teach herself different things, different languages, and educating herself, because she never really got to go to school. That impressed me. She was and she even had her own talk show. Did you guys know that later in life? It was very popular, and she was quite the lady. But
what happens after? Like, was she and June Havoc, were they close as sisters? Did they war? What happened to Mama Rose after Gypsy Rose Lee became? Because I didn't read that.
I'm trying to remember. It's been long, like a long time ago when we read that book. But I think she was with one of her lovers, or took off with her. But she was always working both ways. She was always looking for a rich man to support her, but had her girlfriend on the side. And she probably was born in abject poverty, and this was her survival tactics.
Yeah.
There's everybody goes, well, she was basically a prostitute or a whore or whatever, or whenever you see, I don't think anybody grows up and say, I want to be a pole dancer, I want to be a stripper, they do it because they usually have a child out of wedlock, single moms, and they're trying to make it, and it's their only way of surviving. And
So
then
in the movie, so is this true in the book? Because I never read the book, but in the movie, they made it be that Mama Rose went and lived with the father, in interim between gigs or whatever, and tried to get money from him. And what wasn't it said that the mother had abandoned them? Her mother had abandoned them.
yeah, it's like I said, it's been a while. I need to go back and read that book. I read so many books trying to retain all this stuff, but the thing that stayed with me more than anything was they were just, both of the mothers and the daughters, they were really, it was all survival. It was, every day was a survival, but the mother never wanted to give up the dream. No matter what happened, they would not eat or do anything just so they could get that next show. And then she forced her into that, burlesque number. And of course the little girl didn't want to do it, but it's just like anything. If you groom somebody long enough, you can get them to do it. You know what I'm saying? Especially if it's somebody that you are, you love. Everybody loves their mother. I mean, what mother would try to hurt their child? Well, plenty of them, but they don't see it at the time because it's their mother. And you just do what your mother says. And then finally you get to an age where you kind of figure things out, going, hey, this isn't so good. How can I make this, and there's always a horrible break off. It seems like, I remember, look at the Britney Spears debacle. It's still going on. I just think it's horrible that this grown woman, everything, all of her finances are being controlled by her father. I don't think that's right. At some point, she's got children. I think she should be left her own devices. If she fails, she fails. But I just don't think that's right, you know.
Robert, do you know about this? So first of all, I was blown away. Stephen Sondheim did the lyrics.
Yeah.
Like, was that one of his earlier? I was blown away. I mean, the lyrics are phenomenal.
They are.
The lyrics are better than the script itself.
Yeah, the music's awesome.
It
So,
really
was that one of his earlier?
I don't know. Let's see. So, and I'll Google that. I do want to give everyone an Angelian update. She is alive and kicking.
Yay!
71, and she's an advocate for cancer research and prevention.
Thank goodness.
And this is interesting. You opened the show with a Mae West quote. Angelian played Mae West in a made-for-television movie.
I loved Mae West. I mean, she was hilarious to me, and she still is. And then, when I grew up, I found out she did all these crazy shows later on, well up into her. I mean, she was like in her 70s, maybe even 80s before she ever stopped doing these stage shows. But she's kind of like that only earlier version of those girls. She was brought up and she learned that if you can make them laugh. But she had the best lines. She's like W.C. Fields. They did films together. They had the best lines, the best comebacks. One should go peel me a grape. I mean, come on. I mean, but that's why I put one of her quotes in my book, because I always loved her. And I watched a lot of strange movies when I was growing up. In fact, we're watching them all now. These are movies that I watched when I was a child and loved. And all my other friends are watching Disney Channel. And I watched that too, but my parents didn't set any parameters on films or on reading. We could read anything we wanted. And some people might say, well, that explains a lot about you. But I also think it makes you appreciate the arts more too. So anyway, TK, what's the favorite movie you've ever watched that you remember from when you were a kid?
Ooh, when I was a kid, well, I remember that we didn't have a color TV. And once a year when The Wizard of Oz came on, we would go to my great aunt's house and watch it. And I can remember sitting on the floor with my little younger sister and brother, just so full of anxiety for when that green witch would come point her finger. And I'm not sure I ever got over that, but I loved it.
The witch never scared me, or the flying monkeys. None of that.
Oh, I hated the flying monkeys.
I was terrified of the flying monkeys.
Yeah.
In fact, I can do the Wicked Witch cackle.
I'm sure you can. Let's hear it.
Okay. Let me get into the mood. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog Toto too.
That is good.
I used to do that
really
with my kids. And they go, do it again, Mom, do it again. And so
no, stop. Don't do it again.
Well, we
have nightmares tonight.
I know. I'm gonna have little green monkeys in my dreams.
You really that scared you?
Oh yeah.
If you read my book, you'll understand why it never scared me.
I did read your book, but I don't remember that.
Kathy wants you to buy another copy and read it again.
I bought a copy. I could read it again, but I just
reference to.
Maybe that's why I don't remember who played what in a movie.
Oh well, my
know.
mother was, wanted to be an actress. And when she was all made up, she was like Glinda. She was like the good witch. But when she didn't have her makeup on and she had her glasses on at home, she was really like the Wicked Witch. And, when that came out in my book, I sent it to her and I said, I want you to know that I was afraid growing up. And that didn't bother her at all. She wants, you're just exaggerating. What bothered her about my book was that I told people that she grew up in the country. And she goes, I don't want anybody to know I grew up in the country.
Wow.
I said, well, Mother, Eureka is in the smack dab. It's a rural town, in cattle oil town in the middle of Kansas. I go, it's not like the country was that different than the town. She goes, yeah, but people in New York don't know that. Well, who cares?
Wow.
People in New York.
What I do remember, Kathy, is the details about your mom putting on her makeup.
Oh.
And how that was I guess it was a mask that she was putting on to the world.
She really didn't wear a lot of makeup. She did not. She was very, it was very minimal, but perfection. And she would spend all day. That was the problem that I had with it, because I don't have any patience. And so my mother would say, get ready to go. We're going to go downtown. I've got to get my prescription filled. I have no idea what prescription she was always getting filled. But we always had to go to town. And she would tell us that in the morning, like on a Saturday, and we wouldn't go until 3:00.
You wouldn't go till when?
3:00 in the afternoon.
Wow.
And so, no breakfast, no lunch. We're waiting. And the first place we'd go to the Rexall drugstore. And my mother, she dressed beautifully. I mean, her clothes, she's like Robert. She always has just beautiful, wonderful, not so much designer clothes, but she bought them in the best department stores, really nice clothes. She bought most of her clothes in Lewin's in Wichita. So we'd get to the store and we'd be behind her and she'd go, wait just a minute. And we'd stand outside. She'd be checking her compact or whatever. And she'd wait. And then she'd open the door and she'd hold it until everybody looked to see that she was coming in.
Wow.
And when I was real little, I thought it was kind of cool. But then later it was like, oh, brother, really? And then she'd walk in, boom, but like Marilyn Monroe. And I'm just like, she goes, sit at the bar, on the bar stools, and don't spin. I'm going to the back and you can order a Coke. And so we'd spin like crazy until she got back. But she'd go to the back and but I grew up in that Rexall drugstore. I mean, I read the comic books there. I went there with coffee break with my grandmother. My aunt worked behind the snack bar. It was one of those, it had that boomerang countertop, and they made their Cokes from scratch with the syrup, where they use the phosphate stuff. It was a dime for a Coke. And it was when I first started buying comic books, we were a nickel. And when they went up to a dime, we were just like, oh no. And when they went up to a quarter, I said, that's it. That's just out of my budget. And a quarter. And now what does a comic book cost now? I have no idea.
Oh gosh, I have no clue, but I would imagine they would be pretty pricey today.
But I think a cup of coffee was, 10 cents and refills were free. But my grandparents had a Murphy's, it was called Maloney Shoe and Saddle Shop, and they repaired, tack, like, bits and bridles, cowboy boots, resold shoes. They sold all kinds of, Watkin products, and it was a neat store. But at 10:00 every morning, she'd turn the clock, be back in 15 minutes. And we walk the half a block across the street to the drugstore, and I meet my Aunt Mabel with her there. And we would I'd sit with them, and sometimes I get a strawberry soda, which was a big deal. But most of the time I get a chocolate Coke. But years later, this is the craziest story. I was back in Eureka visiting my my best friend Heidi and her younger sister Erica, and they said, Erica got you a present. And I said, what is that? And they go, come in here, it's so big. And there was this just big thing wrapped with a big bow. And I pulled it down, and all I could see was this boomerang, formica. I go, what is this? And I turn it over, and there's bubble gum on the underneath. It was they had auctioned off, they closed the Rexall, and they had auctioned off all the tabletops. And she bought me one. Now, here's the weird part. When we flipped it over, I'm going, oh my God, I can't tell you how many times I sat under the table, and I even sometimes picked off gum.
Oh my God.
But I swear to God, in this little open spot on the bottom of this thing was in pencil written Kathy. And it was my handwriting.
Oh, wow.
All the booths that they had in there, she bought me the booth that had, and I have it, and I shellac the underneath to keep the germs, out. But I want to hang it as a wall installation or do something with it. I've got it out in my studio right now. But can you imagine? That was when I was probably, before I even started, just was probably first learning how to write. But it was, I can just picture those big fat pencils and, me writing my
the big number where they, no, with
you
number
got
two,
there were
the
those
big
fat
ones,
ones.
yeah.
And then you had the big chief cattle, notepads with the Indian chief on the front. Anyway, that was so
Before we move on, I have something finally to add to the conversation.
good.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Yeah.
$2.99.
Okay.
That's the average cost of a comic book today.
Oh.
They can go up to $4.99 if it's a big one.
Really? Well, that's not so bad. But
No.
they're really thin, but
I
they're
thought it would be a little more.
I thought it would be more too, but they are. I wish I had all my comic books from when I was a kid. And I used to read all my cousins. He had Batman and, Superman. I didn't like those. I liked Millie the Model and Archie and Veronica and
Oh gosh, yeah.
Richie Rich. And
Yes, I remember Richie Rich. And it reminded me of my grandmother who used to tell me, Teresa, it's just as easy to marry a rich boy as it is a poor boy.
that's my mother's favorite line.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's wrong.
So Kathy, I want to answer Ruthie's earlier question about Stephen Sondheim.
Okay.
It appears that one of his first musicals was titled Saturday Night, and it was from 1954. His second musical was West Side Story, 1957, and of course Natalie Wood starred in the film adaptation.
Right.
And then Gypsy, 1959. So Gypsy, he was, he had already begun to make a name for himself. He was already into his third musical.
And you realize, so how many years ago? 38, 48, 58, 59 years ago, almost 60 years ago, he wrote Gypsy Rose Lee.
Mm-hmm.
At least for the movie, because it was in 62. So how old is he now? 80 something?
He's in his 80s. Let me confirm. Let's see.
So he's so young. That's what I'm saying. He was writing.
Oh, he's 91. He was born in 1930.
Oh, he's 91.
Yeah.
91. Oh my gosh.
So he was in his 30s when he was having all these hits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What worries me is now with Netflix and everybody putting out these movies so fast and everything, I'm wondering if my kids have seen all these films because they call them gray movies. They go, are we going to have to watch a gray movie? Black and white. I go, where did you get gray? They're just gray. They're just boring. And I go, no, they're not. I love black and white movies. But I worry about the kids today is if they'll actually watch those films like Gypsy, like, His Girl Friday, or, Bringing Up Baby, or any of these films that were just comedic genius films, or, and now they're trying to censor so many of the classic films like Gone with the Wind. um, because they're not politically correct. Well, neither was that time. It was not politically correct. We can learn from those things. It doesn't mean
I agree with you.
we learn from them. I mean, you can't, they've tried to ban movies off and on for years, just like they try to ban books. I mean, I remember how upset I was when I was working back as an independent bookstore, just bookstore, children's manager. They banned the Little House on the Prairie books in South Dakota. And I go, why? And they said they're derogatory to Native American Indians, because there was a line that said, Ma says, oh no, Pa, there's Indians, I'm scared. And well, I hate to say this, but back in that time, when the white people started going across the country, they were afraid of Native American Indians because they basically made enemies with them because they took advantage of them. And
It's just ridiculous I think it's ridiculous to ban anything. I think that people have to approach the world in just being thoughtful in what they choose and select in the world. It's
And even more than that,
exactly.
if this stuff is taught in schools and you have a teacher who is facilitating a discussion about it, rather than ban it, this is another way of repressing it or putting it under the rug, like it didn't exist. You've got to talk about it. Like you have to use it as a teaching moment, right?
To Kill a Mockingbird I think it's the number one book club choice all time favorite, but it's banned every year. It has language. It has really, graphic, descriptions in the book. It has, all this racial tension and violence, but that's the way it was. And actually, when I read
Catch a Watchman.
Go Catch a Watchman.
Go set a watchman.
Yeah, that's it. Go set a watchman. It's a quote from the Bible, maybe.
Yeah, if you read her first book of what she actually wrote, and then To Kill a Mockingbird is what the editor changed it into from the child's perspective. It got really cleaned up a lot between the two books. So I always tell people you need to read both of them, because the first book is told from her adult self of looking back, and the second book was told from her child self. And they actually, Hollywood, even before it made it film, they made it, they made Atticus Finch into this hero. And if you read the real Atticus Finch in the book, he wasn't quite as, I think you can learn.
It was grayer. Yeah, it was much grayer.
Yeah.
Well, he was conflicted, don't you think? He was conflicted.
Well, I think how you're raised, and that's what we're learning now with everything. I couldn't understand at first this white supremacy or white privilege, and then now I understand it. And now that I just didn't even see it. I mean, I just didn't see it. Now that I see it, I'm aware of it, and I'm very conscious of, but it's like last night I was talking to Stephanie Chance about Dave Chappelle. I love Dave Chappelle. I think he's one of the funniest comedians in the world. And he goes, people, you're putting us out of business by all this political correctness. We can't say anything anymore. And I think we have to be able to say what we want to say without being told you can't say it. I think everybody has different points of views, and unless you talk about it and walk in their shoes for a while, you can't see it their way. But I try to look at both sides of everything. Why people would.
Well, I think that people need to be allowed to make mistakes, and we need to be able to forgive people for those mistakes.
Absolutely. Because times really are rapidly changing, and they're changing so fast. Even in the past 2 years, somebody said, well, I just don't understand the technology. And I'm going to say, you're going to have to, because if you don't start getting on the ball with everything that's happening with Zoom and you know, the internet and how we negotiate this new world, you're going to be left behind, and it's just going to be like you're going to have no communication skills, because everything, it's never going to go back to the way it was. It's going to always be different. And so we have to be able to change. It happens every time there's a change of century. Look at all the changes that happened at the change of the last century. I mean, my gosh, we got the telegraph, we got the train, we got electricity, we got motorized vehicles, we have roads, trains, planes, and it happened like, you know, one day you're driving the wagon to town, next day honk honk of motor cars going by. You know, it happened like we're going to be driving to town one day and we'll watch a spacecraft drive right by us go into town, you know, and can you imagine? But it's going to happen. It's these these buses that are running without drivers, and these semis that they're going to motorize. Have you guys seen these semis they're going to motorize now? They're going to be remote control semis, and they have automatic things of how to avoid wrecks. And I just can't imagine driving on the road with somebody that there's no driver.
Yeah, that's a little creepy.
But
I would totally love to have a car in Atlanta that drove itself, because I could just sit in the back seat and ride, or, you know, hang out when I'm in awful traffic, take a nap.
They have buses in Tyler that are completely driverless now.
In where?
Tyler, Texas. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. That pick up people, you know, public transport.
Well, you know, at some point there'll be a generation that'll go, you drove your own car?
Right.
How could you do that?
Well, you know, they've got rid of driver's ed now in schools. So
well, and the strippers will be holograms.
Yeah.
They already are.
Yeah.
They already are holograms, and they've already got, you know, these virtual sex worlds where people can go into, and they've got these human looking.
They do?
Yeah, they've got
where I've been.
human sex robots now for both men and women. And they are anatomically correct, and they're perfect, and they do all kinds of weird.
Oh my goodness. Well, can they mow the yard? Because then I might be getting one.
Well, you know, you've got mops that go around the, you know, the dust mops and things going around with the cats riding on them.
If they can do laundry and chores, sign me up.
I'm all for, remember the Jetsons? Remember how she put her head in the hood to come out a different color and different style? I go, I'm ready for that. I'm ready for that.
That sounds a lot like you.
So I don't, just a little bit about, a little tidbit about GYPSY. So, you know, she had one son, Eric Lee Kirkland. He grew up thinking that his last name was Kirkland. He didn't know his true paternity until he was an adult, and his father was film director Otto Preminger. Yeah, so she had had an affair with Otto Preminger. Now he wrote a book about his mom, which was really fascinating to read. So now he goes by Eric Lee Preminger, but he tells the story that his grandmother came over, and he told his mom, you know, GYPSY mom, you know, I guess grandmother's here, and she was down in the foyer, and he said, well, don't let her in, and make sure she doesn't pinch the Picasso.
I've got to go back and do some. Where are you getting all this information?
Just a little bit of everywhere.
I know. It's so interesting.
Yeah, it is, guys, but I'm going to have to sign off.
I know, it's about that time. But next week,
she's got to go. She's got to go research those sex robots.
Where are you hanging out, Kathy?
Now, this was a New York Times story about, and they make them in Asia or somewhere in one of the Asian countries, but they had a whole thing on, I was like 20 or 60 minutes on these things. And I'm telling you, it was really, because they're like perfect looking and everything. It's really creepy.
Well, now here's one movie I remember, The Stepford Wives.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Paula Prentice was in that movie.
Oh, really? Wow. I remember.
Paula Prentice.
The boys are.
You guys, if you want to see a great movie about these, these girlfriend doll things. It's with Ryan Gosling,
Love it.
called Lars and the
Oh,
Real
I've seen
World.
that.
I love that movie.
It's
I
so
love that movie, but that thing is like amateur compared to what they're doing now.
I understand, but that he would bring it over for dinner to his sisters or whatever and sit her at the table.
Yeah, you got to see that movie. That is a really good movie. And I'm so any movie suggestions that you know about, send them my way. Did we decide what we're going to do next week?
We have not made a decision about next week, I do not believe. But there's so many options. We could do, so we've been sort of light musical and comedy. What about Sunset Boulevard?
Oh, that would be fabulous. Have you seen that, Sunset Boulevard? Oh,
Kathy, so much dress up. Norma Desmond, you're perfect for that.
yeah, I probably can pull her off.
In a minute.
Those crazy eyes, those crazy eyes, and that poor young man. Well, okay, that sounds good to me. Now down the line, because I am now down another rabbit hole on binge watching. I'm watching Joanna Lumley and Jennifer Saunders in Absolutely Fabulous.
Mhm.
And I'm in the 3rd season. And
Yeah.
I've never laughed so hard in my life when the kitchen burned down. Did you see
Right.
that episode?
And she survives, of course. She's fallen asleep with a cigarette in her mouth.
I'm just waiting for, if you haven't seen this show, it's about these 2 women. One is the head of a PR firm, and the other one, she basically just
She's like an editor for a fashion magazine, but she
Yeah.
really does nothing.
She does nothing. And well, really, I don't know what either one of them do except spend money and go shopping and dress really crazy. Because Joanne Lumley is, I've decided I want to be her when I grow up. She is awesome. She's like 75 now, and she looks fabulous. I mean, I watch all of her shows going around the world. She takes you to India. She takes you to the Siberian countries, China, Japan, Haiti, Caribbean. She all down the Nile to the source of the Nile, and she dresses fabulously. And she was a former model that she was in like was it the 2nd season of the Avengers? She played
Yeah, that sounds right.
I love the original Avengers. But
Diana Rigg, I thought she was so
that
cool.
was my favorite show in the 5th grade.
I loved it.
I love that too.
I loved it.
I loved her so much. But I saw Joanna Lumley for the first time in Cold Comfort Farm, and you can't find it on any streaming service. I'm really ticked. It's one of the best films ever, and she was great in it. But in this show, it's so ludicrous. It's about these 2 women, and they smoke and drink more than anybody that you can imagine. You have no idea how much they smoke and drink, and how right now they've decided they don't have any relationships, so they're just going to hire some men to go. It's just now they pick them out. It's so ludicrous and so far off.
It is.
It's just like, oh my, it's all the stuff that you just, people won't talk about, but they do. They talk about everything. And the one girl has a daughter that she really didn't want, but she loves her. But it's
sassy.
weirdest relationship. And the mother, oh my gosh, the mother is just priceless. And but anyway, I'm hooked on it. I want to do a Joanne Lumley talk, and I don't know, I guess on Absolutely Fabulous. And she's got 2 ex-husbands. One of them is gay. Is it Justin and what's his name? She's got 2 ex-husbands, and one of them is now gay, and one of them is like working on a play.
It's great. Well, and Adina Monsoon's big client is Lulu.
Oh yes, Lulu's on it all the time, and Lulu's one of my absolute favorite.
Oh, Lulu.
Yeah, the Lulu from To Serve with Love.
To Serve with Love.
she's on it all the time. And she's like, and they
Yeah.
also just had Britt, what's her name? She was they have
Britt
famous people.
Britt Eklund.
Britt, is it Britt Eklund or
Blonde,
Britt
the
Summer?
blonde.
Britt, she was a very famous movie star back in the Twiggy
I think
time.
it's Britt Eklund, isn't it?
Britt, yeah, she was on one episode.
right.
You just
Right.
never know who you're going to see, and but these girls get into more trouble than anybody I've ever seen. It's a wonder they're alive, and it's a wonder they're not in jail. But it's the camaraderie between them is just, it's so over the top. It's just the most, you think you have troubles, you got to watch this show. And the hairstyles on this show are, one's kind of a hippie, you know, the person, she writes the shows and stars in them, and she doesn't look anything like this in real life, but she's got various degrees of curly auburn hair. And then Joanna Lumley has various degrees of bleach blonde hair and various beehives.
Yeah. Very much like Ivana Trump.
Ivana Trump exaggerated. But I want, if we do it, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that French twist. That is just, it's like.
Well, you can do the French twist, but before we go, you got to bump it with a trumpet.
Yeah. You gotta have a gimmick, you know, whatever. So, well, onward and upward. So next week, Sunset Boulevard. And then maybe we can do how many of you seen Joanne Lumley's they call it Ab Fab?
Yeah. Oh, I've seen every episode.
I want to wait till I get them all seen, because I'm waiting for the one I saw where she went to New York to get the doorknob.
Yes.
Is this Netflix?
This is on Amazon Prime.
It was originally it's a British sitcom.
It's on BBC. I get it off. I subscribe to the BBC Select on Amazon Prime, and it's on there. And I'm in the 3rd season. And how many are there?
Oh gosh, I'm not.
Maybe a while, but before we have it. But when we have it, you know, and I can't smoke, so I'm sorry, I can't do that or drink. But anyway, just a reminder for anybody who wants to, there's always Breathless Wines. Well, you know, I love the Breathless Wines. In fact, we had a champagne punch last night with Breathless Wine. It was delish with fresh raspberries and blackberries. Oh, It was really nice. We had a mango cake, which I'd never had in my life, and we had empanadas. It was like hors d'oeuvre dinner thing. It was really nice. So if you haven't seen the photos of last night's GYPSY costume party and art exhibition that we had last night at the Le Moreau Gallery, they're up. Stephanie Chance took all the pictures, and our big show is coming up June 27th at Le Moreau, and I'll be doing an art and book talk, and we're inviting everybody to come June 27th in Tyler, Texas. So if you can't be there, we did a live FaceTime last night of everybody dancing to the music. It was pretty fun. And there were great costumes and great people and great conversation. So whatever we do, I've decided that since I've had so much fun dressing up for the Book and Film Club, I'm going to start dressing up for the online book club. So this coming week is Joe Palmer's Mariner's Tale. So, you know, ahoy, Captain. You know, we're going to be going on board this tale that's set out off the coast of Florida. So he lives in the same town as Mandy Haynes, Fernandina Beach, Florida, which is Amelia Island. Now, what is the chances of two of our authors living on this little island off the coast of Florida, near Jacksonville, Florida? Do you know that it has been owned by 5 different countries?
Wow.
It's quite fascinating, the history. I'm learning it through Mandy. But I'm going to start dressing up for our book clubs. Maybe not quite as elaborate as the film, but themed. I'm going to go with the theme of the book. So this should get interesting when we get to the cicada tree. I'll come as a locust.
Covered in them.
Oh, you just don't know what I'll do. All right. Thank you for joining us, TK. Take good care of
I
the.
enjoyed it so much.
What are
What?
the horses' names?
Okay, well, one of them is Foxy, and she's a thoroughbred. Her registered name was Hey Good Looking, so they changed it to Foxy, which I like better. The other one is the older mare is Nikki Jones.
Nikki Jones. Okay. Well, it's been lovely as always. Thank you guys for joining us. Of course, you know this is all recorded and downloaded onto our Kathy L. Murphy YouTube channel, which is just really exploding, you all. We may not have very many people coming on board for this, but boy, are they watching them later. And we've got a lot of great, I just posted the interview I did with Lovelace Cook on Bollywood and books. And I'm going to hopefully get the one up for Kathy Ramsberger just did for her podcast. And we've got all kinds of fun things that we're doing. So here's to reading days and storytelling days ahead. So see you at the movies. It's all about the story. Bye, y'all. Till next time. Bye, Robert. Bye-bye.
Hey,
Bye, everybody. Good to see you.
y'all look great.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.